Hello everyone and welcome back to these sessions on financial management. Today in this class we are going to start with a very important topic, again a very interesting topic, and that is what we call as ratio analysis. What exactly is ratio analysis? Why are we calculating ratios? It makes so much of sense when you are using this analysis. Now, why we are using ratios? Why ratios? Because unless you know the objective, you will not be able to understand the implication of the same. Let me give you few examples through which you can understand. Suppose there are two students, A and B. So, A comes to me with a score of 350 marks, B comes to me with a score of 400 marks. Who is performing better? So you compare the marks and whoever is scoring more marks will be performing better. So you would outright say that sir, B is performing better because B has scored 400 marks. But then I give you one more information. This student A has scored 350 out of 500 and that student B has scored 400 out of 800. So, this first student has scored 350 out of 500 and the second student B has scored 400 out of 800. Now, if I ask you to analyze which student is performing better, you will not look into the absolute marks because the base marks for both the students were different. Because the base marks were different, you are definitely going to convert this information into percentage. Now, what would you do for computing percentage? For student A, it will be 350 divided by 500 into 100 and you would find it as 70%. Whereas for student B, it would be 400 by 800 into 100, which will give you 50%. And then you conclude that it is actually student A who is performing better than student B, because if you talk on relative terms, the percentage scored by student A is much higher than student B. So friends, if you look into when you are comparing this percentage of score by two students, you know you are actually comparing two different ratios. So ratio you express in a numerator denominator form or you express in a percentage form, it is one and the same. It is just a pattern in which or a style in which you are presenting that ratio. So when you are showing a student's score by way of a percentage, it is nothing but it is a ratio that you are using, and it is only through that ratio when you could compare that which student has performed better. Another example, I tell you entity A and entity B, two entities. Entity A has made a profit of rupees 10 lakhs, entity B has made a profit of 5 lakhs. Who has performed better? If I just give you this much information, it is basically an incomplete information. Looking at the profit figures, you can say that A has earned more profit. But then I tell you the total capital employed by company A was 1 crore. Immediately now what you will get an idea about is return on capital employed. So profit earned by the first company, which is 10 lakhs out of capital employed of 1 crore, you will say the return on capital employed for that company is 10%. Correct? Profit earned is 10 lakhs and capital employed is 1 crore. The rate of return on capital employed will be obviously 10%. Now, company B that has earned a profit of only 5 lakhs, its capital employed was only 20 lakhs. Now, when you compute return on capital employed for company B, what will you get? 5 lakhs divided by 20 lakhs into 100. That would give you 25% return on capital employed. Now friends, when you compare the absolute profits, you get the idea that company A has been earning more profits than company B. But can you look into the amount of capital that you have put in? In company A, there is capital of 1 crore, company B, there is capital of 20 lakhs only. So comparison should never be made on absolute profit generated by the two companies. Comparison should be made using a ratio called rate of return on capital employed. So friends, these couple of examples are enough for us to understand that yes, we may not be able to compare facts and figures of two entities just like that. We need to arrive at ratios. We need to arrive at the comparison base not from the absolute amount comparison, but a relative comparison which will be using such ratios as the base for comparison. So I am sure you are clear with the matter, and what I have done in your book, there are initial 2 questions which will give you comprehensive understanding about various types of ratios, their implications, their interpretations, their meaning, and what exactly is the objective of computing and determining that ratio. After these initial 2 questions, more of application part will be seen in questions ahead. So what I have planned to do, the first question in your textbook, I will be discussing that with you in detail, giving you all explanatory notes and explanation and all the interpretation required over there. However, from second question, I will play a smaller role and you will play a bigger role. I will just give you a little bit of guidance and you will have to make the necessary calculations. So question number 2 will be basically more of your practice and less of my support. In question 1, you have to just sit and understand everything and make sure that everything is getting cleared up. These initial 2 questions will take a lot of time. So what you are not supposed to lose at all is the level of your patience. Your patience level is what you have to keep at its peak right from the beginning of the batch till this last topic. You know that this is supposed to be last topic in your syllabus. One thing that I have been able to explain you, apart from the finance concepts, it is the art of keeping your patience high, and that same thing you have to do over here as well. But believe me one thing friends, once you are able to cross the hurdle of the first 2 questions, which are actually going to take a lot of time, you will find that third question onward it will be a smooth journey. And once you are done with the questions from my book, when you look at ICAI study material, it will be a cakewalk for you. That is my promise. So let's not wait any longer and let's not waste any further moment. We straight away start with that comprehensive example given in question number 1. Let's start reading this question first of all. So what we find, we have been given balance sheet of NJ Limited as at 31/3/2019. Now you have equity share capital, reserves and surplus, 12% debentures, 15% bank loan, and then you have current liabilities. Then you have in the asset side intangible assets, PPE standing for property, plant and equipment. Then you have current assets including inventories, debtors, cash and bank. Balance sheet is readily given to you dated 31st March 2019. Further in the question what is informed is income statement of NJ Limited for the year ended 31/3/2020. Now one thing as a note of caution, if I take you back to the balance sheet, look at the balance sheet date, it was dated 31/3/2019, and then the income statement is given to you for the year ended 31/3/2020. What does this imply? That the financial year is beginning from 1/4/2019 and ending at 31/3/2020. That means the balance sheet given to you at the beginning is basically opening balance sheet or balance sheet at the beginning of the year. Now let us focus on this income statement. Sales less cost of goods sold, you have gross profit, then there are cash operating expenses, and then what you have is EBITDA. I'm sure you remember what is EBITDA. EBITDA, that is earnings before interest, tax, depreciation and amortization. So amortization is a systematic spread over of the intangible asset cost over its useful life, and depreciation is a systematic spread over of the cost of tangible assets like property, plant and equipment over their useful life. So amortization and depreciation once subtracted from EBITDA, that is from EBITDA, what you get is EBIT, that is earnings before interest and tax. We have been learning throughout the earlier topics in financial management that EBIT, earnings before interest and tax, is basically operating profit of the company. Let us move ahead, and the income statement continues. And now EBIT, which was the last line in the previous statement, is the first line over here. So EBIT standing for earnings before interest and tax. Of course, you are first going to subtract interest. Now we have two components of long-term borrowings. One is debentures and one is bank loan. So interest on debentures and interest on bank loans subtracted. If you are wondering from where did we get these amounts of interest on debentures and bank loan, these are basically the nominal values of this debenture and bank loan which is stated in the balance sheet, along with the interest rate also mentioned over there. You apply that and you would see that interest on debentures will be 1,20,000, interest on bank loan will be 1,50,000. When you subtract these interest components from EBIT, obviously what you get is EBT, that is earnings before tax. Now tax rate is given as 30%. So tax at 30% on 20 lakhs will be 6 lakhs. So profit after tax is 14 lakhs. Now notice one thing, in the balance sheet there is no information about preference share capital. Because there is no preference share capital, obviously what will happen, there will be many calculations within our solutions which are linked with preference shares and preference dividend will be avoided because we don't have that component of capital. And another impact of that is whatever be profit after tax will be interpreted as earnings available to equity shareholders. So all your profit after tax is just attributable to equity shareholders only. So from your profit earned, you have given equity dividend of 6,72,000. So what remains is the net retained earnings, that is 7,28,000. Now number of equity shares given to you is 40,000 shares. So you should know one thing, that earnings available to equity shareholders, it is 14 lakhs, and number of equity shares being 40,000, earnings per share will be obviously 14 lakhs divided by 40,000, and that is already reported to you as 35. Let me tell you one more thing, earnings per share itself is a ratio, correct? Earnings per share itself is a ratio which is computed by taking total earnings available to equity shareholders divided by number of equity shares. But because this EPS is already given to you in the question itself, we will not have a need to actually determine the same. Anyway, let us move ahead and look at the information given further. Now what we find in front of us is the balance sheet of NJ Limited as at 31/3/2020, and that means this is the balance sheet at end of the year. Now we must always look into few factors. For example, if you look at the intangible asset at the beginning, it must have been given as 10 lakhs, and the amortization on intangible assets charged in the statement of P&L was 2 lakhs. So it is obvious that intangible assets at the end has to be 8 lakhs. But friends, here you have to exercise a caution. By chance, if this amount is any amount other than 8 lakhs, then there is a possibility that either we have added new intangible assets in our business, or if the amount is reducing, it will be implication that some intangible assets might be either written off or disposed of. Similarly, property, plant and equipment, whatever was the opening balance, from that when you subtract depreciation, you must arrive at closing balance. However, such reconciliation cannot be made with respect to current assets, because current assets will change on daily basis. And now, same thing, in your liability side and equity side, if you see equity share capital, no change, reserves and surplus, there is a change. So how do you reconcile the component of reserves and surplus? Look at the balance sheet at the beginning of the year, the opening balance sheet, and look at the amount of reserves and surplus given over there. And then just let me take you back to the previous slide. Can you see the net retained earnings which will be added to your old balance of reserves and surplus? After adding this 7,28,000, you must be getting the final balance of reserves and surplus by end of the year as 20 lakhs. Now these things a student must reconcile before computing and analyzing ratios, because if you are not catching the hidden information, you will not be able to make your solution correct. So please exercise these precautions in every question you solve ahead. Question further informs you something more. It says, as at 31st March 2020, the market price per share of the company was rupees 336. The company distributed equity dividend by end of the year. You are required to determine all the necessary ratios for analysis along with the interpretation of each ratio. So friends, that was the question, and because we have already understood all the information, we have reconciled lots of figures already, time for us to simply move ahead and determine all the necessary ratios. So let us just go ahead and do that. When we start your solution, you would write the heading as determining and interpreting ratios. Over here we are going to compute each ratio one by one, and as and when we compute a ratio, we will look into the meaning and implication of the ratio and how to interpret the outcome of the same. So we will begin with the first ratio as current ratio. So before we start with this calculation, this is a very popular ratio. You should know what is the meaning of current ratio before we calculate. Current ratio is basically ratio of current assets with that of current liabilities. So to compute this ratio, what you just have to do, take total current assets divided by total current liabilities. It will give you what is the relative value of current assets against current liabilities. For example, if you have 10 lakhs of current liabilities and 30 lakhs of current assets, the ratio will be 30 lakhs by 10 lakhs, that is 3:1. In that case, what will be the implication? For every 1 rupee of current liability, you have 3 rupees of current assets available. So we have learnt what is the meaning of current assets and current liabilities. So when you are computing current ratio over here, your focus has to be on current assets and current liabilities. One more thing I would talk on this is about working capital. Friends, you should know one thing, that working capital is a component of capital which is used in daily routine business operations. In other words, it is that portion of the capital which is used on day-to-day basis in your operations. Basically, how much of working capital is there in any business, you can clearly assess by taking difference between current assets and current liabilities. So if your current assets are substantially higher than current liabilities, you have enough amount of working capital. Now why are we computing current ratios? Please understand, just looking at working capital amount, we will never understand whether the working capital is sufficient or not. Therefore, we have to look into how much is the standing of current assets against current liabilities to have a clear idea about what is the status of working capital, whether the working capital is sufficient or not. So, working capital is current asset minus current liability, and current ratio is current assets divided by current liability. So, current ratio is a ratio of the two components, whereas working capital is the difference between the two components. So, whenever we are learning ratios, we should not ignore the working capital position. But let me tell you, working capital is an absolute amount, that is not a ratio. So, when we make a complete analysis, we should not ignore anything. Both the factors should be considered, the ratio as well as the absolute amount of working capital. So, let me show you how to compute current ratio in the given case. All of you please write up the calculation. So, current ratio, it is a ratio of current assets and current liabilities. Total current assets in our case will be 24 lakh plus 16 lakh plus 4 lakhs. That will be 44 lakhs. Now, one moment. You people might be now wondering that we are not finding these figures in the balance sheet. From where did sir get these values? Look at one thing. Question has given you two balance sheets. One was the opening balance sheet and one is the closing balance sheet. The reference of opening balance sheet should not be given. There will be limited use of the information from the opening balance sheet, because we are determining ratios at which date. That is the idea. We are determining ratios not on 31st March 2019. We are determining all these ratios at the end of the year, that is on 31st March 2020. Therefore, the balance sheet that you must refer for extracting this information is the balance sheet dated 31st March 2020 in this example. So, let us move ahead and continue. So, here we have total current assets of 44 lakhs. Let us take the total of current liabilities, which will be 9 lakh plus 4 lakh plus 7 lakhs, which is giving you 20 lakhs. So, current ratio is basically current assets divided by current liabilities, which will be 44 lakhs by 20 lakhs, that is 2.2:1, or you can also write this as 2.2 times. But this will be a better style of writing it as 2.2:1. Let us move ahead and continue writing further. Current ratio indicates the number of times current assets stand against current liabilities. Ideally, a current ratio of 2:1 is considered appropriate. Now, this line is a general line that you can write up in all your answers, that the ideal ratio in terms of current ratio, it is considered as 2:1, which implies that your current assets should be twice the amount of your current liabilities. So, in the given case, this ratio is marginally higher than 2:1. So, because our computed ratio is 2.2:1, so against each rupee of current liability, you should have rupees 2 as current assets. But here what is happening? In our case, against each rupee of current liability, we have 2.2 as current assets, which is indicating what? Sufficient working capital. Now, I told you linked with this information is the amount of working capital itself. Once again, a caution note, this net working capital is not a ratio, but it is included separately in our analysis anyway. And how it is computed? It is total current assets minus total current liabilities, and that would give you 44 lakhs minus 20 lakhs, that is 24 lakhs. So, net working capital of 24 lakhs supported by current ratio of 2.2:1 indicates that the company has sufficient working capital. Time for us to move ahead and discuss the next ratio, that is quick ratio. Now, what is this quick ratio? Let me explain it to you. Quick ratio, it is also known as acid test ratio. I repeat, acid test ratio. Now, what is this acid test and what is this quick ratio? Basically, this is a ratio of quick assets with current liabilities. Now what are quick assets? Quick assets, also known as liquid assets. So what happens? Liquid assets. What are liquid assets? That also you should know. The formal understanding, or I would say the conceptual understanding over here would be assets which have liquidity, or assets which are easily convertible into cash. Now you have a big list of assets which are current assets. Now for example, stock, debtors, cash, bank balance, marketable securities, all these come under current assets. If you look into this list of current assets, cash and bank balance, they are already in a highly liquid form. They are already cash, correct? So you don't have to convert this into cash. Then marketable securities, the meaning marketable securities, that means whenever you want, you can easily sell it out and convert that into cash. You have bills receivable, which can be immediately convertible into cash, because if your bills due date hasn't arrived, you can still go to bank and discount the bill, even though you will have to incur some discount charges, but at least you can convert that into cash immediately. You have debtors in your balance sheet. Even debtors can be quickly convertible into cash. If the debtors payment due date hasn't arrived, you can go for a factoring arrangement. You can sell your debtors and get cash immediately. So you have lots of arrangements of converting these assets into cash immediately. However, there are certain components of current assets which are not quickly convertible into cash. Inventory, that is stock, what you have, the stock in trade is one such component. You cannot convert that into cash immediately. In fact, when I start converting my inventory into cash, it is what I am making sale of my products, right? So sale of goods is an activity that will generate profit for you. It's a long-term activity. Your inventory is not quickly convertible into cash as and when you want. Only when a customer comes to buy a product, you can sell the product, and that is the only time you get an opportunity to convert inventory into cash. Inventory is one such component of current asset which cannot be classified as liquid asset or quick asset. Another component is some expenses that you have paid in advance. For example, insurance premium, what you have made as a prepayment, prepaid expenses. So prepaid insurance premium, suppose you have made the payment for 1 full year on 1st January. So by the time you present a balance sheet on 31st March, proportionate 9 months of insurance premium will be considered as prepaid insurance and will be included in the asset side of the balance sheet along with all other current assets. Now, this is not a component that can be converted into cash, because to the insurance company you have already paid that money. That is now not convertible back into cash. So such components of current assets which are not easily convertible into cash, when you remove from current assets, what is the remainder is just the liquid asset. So the idea is same. How much immediate liquidity you have against your current liabilities. Over here, when we discuss that your current ratio ideally should be 2:1, we would say quick ratio ideally should be 1:1. That means you should have at least that much of liquid assets which are enough to pay off your current liabilities. So we don't want a gap over here, but at least it should be equal. What could be a dangerous situation where your liquid assets are very low and current liability is very high? In that case, what will happen? You will keep on struggling to meet your payments on a regular basis, and that is what we call as putting entity into a short-term insolvency condition. You know what is the meaning of insolvency? Means you are not capable of paying your debts. What is a short-term insolvency? Short-term insolvency means you have enough assets to pay off your liabilities, but on a immediate short run, you are having cash crunch, you are having liquidity crunch, and you are not able to pay off your dues on time. That is what we call as short-term insolvency. So these ratios will help you to assess, are we having good solvency position on a short term basis? Are we having good liquidity position on short term basis or not? That is the objective. So let us write up notes in this regard. So please pay attention on the screen. I'll show the same to you. Quick ratio, also known as acid test ratio. It is ratio of quick assets with current liabilities. Just like current ratio, the objective of quick ratio is to determine the liquidity position of the company. So what are quick assets, which are also known as liquid assets? These are current assets minus inventories, or you can call it as stock in trade, and minus prepaid expenses. So I told you inventory and prepaid expenses are such component of current assets which are not easily convertible into cash. So they will never form part of liquid assets or quick assets. In this case, it will be 44 lakhs minus 24 lakhs, that is 20 lakhs. Let us move ahead and continue writing further. Quick ratio will be liquid assets divided by current liabilities. So we have already found that current liabilities, it is 20 lakhs, and we have just calculated the amount of liquid assets. It is also 20 lakhs. So this ratio would be 20 lakhs by 20 lakhs, that is 1 by 1, or simply 1:1. Quick ratio of 1:1 is considered most appropriate, which indicates that quick assets should be at least equal to current liabilities. In the given case, it is ideal. So in the given case, whatever is given is the most appropriate thing, and we are finding that in our given scenario, quick assets or liquid assets are exactly matching with current liabilities. So there is absolutely nothing wrong over here with respect to the liquidity of the company. Alright friends, let us move ahead and now deal with the next ratio, that is absolute liquidity ratio. Now, what is the meaning of absolute liquidity ratio? Let us observe the meaning of the same. So do you know, here we are talking about absolute liquidity. So we are not talking about debtors or bills receivable which can be converted into money at little later stage, or where there will be some requirement of making a contract with some party, because if you want to convert your debtors into cash immediately, you have to at least appoint a factor who would buy out your receivables. If you want to discount your bill of exchange immediately, you have to approach a bank, request a bank to accept the discounting of bill proposition, and then only it will happen. However, what is lying in your hand as cash in hand, or lying in your bank account as cash at bank, or what is lying with you as marketable securities which can be instantly convertible into cash, these marketable securities are technically also known as cash equivalents. So marketable securities which have very high chance of immediate conversion into cash, these marketable securities which are also known as cash and cash equivalents. If I want to know the absolute liquidity position, I should consider only one component from my current assets, that is cash and cash equivalents, and I have to compare that with the amount of my current liabilities. So have you noticed one thing? Whenever we are computing any ratio based on liquidity position, the denominator, the base is always the current liability. So against current liability, how much of current assets you have, that is current ratio. Against current liabilities, how much of liquid assets you have, that is quick ratio. And against current liabilities, how much absolute liquidity you have, that is absolute liquidity ratio or absolute liquid ratio. So this absolute word will allow us to take only cash and cash equivalents in the numerator. Let me show you how to measure this in the given scenario and give you some important notes on the same. This is the ratio of absolutely liquid assets to current liabilities. Absolute liquid assets are cash and marketable securities. I told you that the alternate name for marketable securities you can write up as cash equivalents. In this example, there is only one component available, that is cash, which is 4 lakhs. So absolute liquidity ratio will be, in this case, 4 lakhs divided by 20 lakhs, which would give you 0.2 by 1 or 0.2:1. What is the outcome of that? This ratio indicates that how much is the balance of cash and marketable securities or cash and cash equivalents for each rupee of current liability. So here our final interpretation would be, for every 1 rupee of current liability, the immediate absolute liquidity that we have in hand is 20 paisa or rupee 0.2. Now when we are moving ahead, it is another very important ratio that I want you to understand and write, that is basic defense interval. Now I will explain the meaning and implication of this ratio only after you have completed the writing work, so that when you write there will be basic things that you will understand on your own. Then I'll explain you the real implication of this ratio. This is something very important. Basic defense interval. It is the ratio of absolute liquid assets with daily cash operating expenses. Daily cash operating expenses will include cost of goods sold and all other operating and administrative expenses, excluding non-cash expenses like depreciation and amortization. In this case, your cost of goods sold is 1 crore 20 lakhs and cash operating expenses, it is 47 lakh 30,000. So your total operating cost on cash basis for the entire year will be 1 crore 67 lakh 30,000. Let me take you ahead and give you some more calculations over here. So daily operating cost, that is daily cash operating cost, will be 1 crore 67 lakh 30,000, that is your annual cost, simply divided by 365 days, and you will be getting rupees 45,836 as cash cost per day. Now the basic defense interval will be absolute liquid assets divided by daily cash operating cost, which will give you 4 lakhs divided by 45,836, that will give you 8.73. And the implication of this, the above computed ratio indicates that the company's balance of cash and marketable securities are sufficient to cover up the cash operating cost up to 8.73 days. Time for me to explain you what is this basic defense interval. Please observe one thing. How did we approach this whole calculation? It is the process of calculation which in itself gives you a lot of clarification. We would first want to know how much is the cash spending throughout the year. Cash spending, not for buying assets or doing anything else, cash spending for your routine operations. Now what is routine operation? The company's cost of goods sold. See, you are into some business, you are making sales, and parallelly you are incurring cost of goods sold. So whatever be cost of goods sold that you are incurring, that component, and all your cash expenses, that is your cash operating expenses. So this will not include interest payment, this will not include tax payment, this will include only and only your cash operating expenses. So two components you have to consider: your cost of goods sold plus your cash operating expenses. When you take aggregate of that, it will be total annual cash operating cost. So total annual cash operating cost, in our case it's a huge amount. That much we are going to spend throughout the year. Okay, so that is the cumulative figure for the year. If I want to know how much I am spending daily, that total amount will be divided by 365 days. That will show my daily spending, which is 45,000 and something in our example. Daily cash spending, correct? Daily spending. Now that daily spending is what we have to incur day to day basis. We have to spend that money. Fine. We have arrived at that one calculation, that daily cash operating cost is 45,000 something. Now, what happens when there is a regular flow of business? We don't need this kind of ratio that time, correct? When there is a regular flow of business, every day what will happen? Customers will come, buy the product, pay the price, and we are having cash outflow as well as parallelly cash inflow also. So that inflow, outflow, that cycle will keep on moving. But imagine what happens when a scenario like a lockdown is imposed. When a lockdown scenario is imposed, it's not a usual scenario. So we need this kind of ratio to handle those situations. How much absolute liquid cash you have? In our example, it is just 4 lakhs. So when there is a lockdown situation, I am not allowed to sell my product because I am not allowed to open my store also. Fine. But I will have to spend my cost on day to day basis, because the workers who are working with me on daily wage basis, they are dependent on me. I have to pay them money. I have to give them their basic requirements. I have to give them money. In simple words, my cash inflow gets stopped and my cash outflow is continued. I would want to know my available balance of 4 lakh rupees of cash, how long it will sustain. How long it will sustain. So in our calculation, it is what? 8.73 days. That means approximately 8 to 9 days I can manage. So if the government is imposing lockdown for a period longer than this, then I know that I will be into troubles. Until this, I can manage. This is the objective of computing this particular ratio. To how long time or for what long time you can manage to use your existing cash balance without having any inflow further, and that utilization we are pinpointing only and only towards our business operation, not for any other purpose. That was about basic defense interval. Time for us to move ahead and discuss the alternate approach for applying basic defense interval. So let us look into this alternate approach. Over here, one change that is to be understood in the numerator, that will be, apart from including the absolute liquid assets, which are aggregate of cash and marketable securities, you should also consider receivables. So keep in your mind one thing, the denominator, daily cash operating cost, remains as it is. In the numerator, you are now taking more of your resources, particularly you are also considering receivables. So if I look into the balance sheet, the amount of receivables informed as debtors by end of the year is 16 lakhs. As a result, when you compute this ratio, it will be 4 lakhs plus 16 lakhs divided by 45,836. When you compute this, you are going to get 43.63. And how do you interpret basic defense interval? Without any additional inflows further, you should be able to manage your cash operating cost up to 43.63 days. However, keep in mind one thing, if you are following this alternate approach, you are dependent on collection from receivables also. Keep that thing in your mind. That means you are indirectly assuming that your receivables are easily convertible into cash, and based on that you are applying this calculation. So the interpretation of this line, the above computed ratio indicates that the company's balance of cash, marketable securities and receivables are sufficient to cover up the cash operating cost up to 43.63 days. Mind it, one more thing, the previous approach what we have taken, in the interpretation we have written over there balance of cash and marketable securities. Here in the interpretation we are clarifying balance of cash, marketable securities and receivables.